The main primary resource I used throughout the whole construction process of my short film was a Canon HD camera, which I used to film all my visual footage on. I found that this piece of equipment was a high enough quality for my need, and as I had used the equipment for my previous work, genetics, as well as throughout the production when creating my own blog videos, I felt confident with working with the camera. The main issue that can arise, however, for a standard Canon HD camera is the lack of sound clarity due to the low quality microphone on the camera, which I discovered from my previous work, whereby I used the camera to record through a closed lens cap the voiceover of the mother, as well as the diegetic on-screen dialogue of the conversation between the two male characters. However, my piece is a silent film and therefore is highly reliant on sound. I decided that by developing on the issues that had arisen from my previous work with the sound quality, that I would record the music separately within a recording studio. This in turn allowed for my sound to be a much higher quality, and I personally think that it creates a more professional finish. This demonstrates how making these small changes to the technological equipment, such as using a recording studio rather than relying on a camera, can make a big difference to the overall finish of the film. For the majority of my filming, I used a tripod stand for the camera. This in turn made a difference in stabilising the movement of each individual shot and overall created a better quality to the framing of each shot. However, unlike my foundation production piece, whereby I felt restricted by the tripod to start with and was very reluctant to move away from it within my filming, I learned that from some of the shots, such as the home videos within genetics, the most effective ones were those that were handheld shots. Therefore, although I tried to use the tripod for as many shots as necessary, there were some that was not possible to apply this form of equipment, such as the opening shot, where the camera was positioned directly on the floor in order to capture a low shot of the feet getting out of bed. Although in the end I did not need to apply this effect, as overall I felt I managed to convey steady shots consistently throughout my piece. I would have been able to use a stabiliser effect in Premiere Pro in order to correct the shots whereby the camera is unstable. This in turn teaching me that within post-production, technological software was able to correct issues that can arise within physical production process. As a director, it is vital to have gained an understanding of such simple but very useful effects. To my previous production work, I was highly reliant on editing technologies within post-production and used the software program Adobe Premiere Pro CS4 to edit my physical footage that I had captured. A previous project that I had conducted, Life in the Lanes, a short film capturing the hidden secrets of Norwich lanes, was edited on Windows Movie Maker. However, although this piece of software was effective for this project, I felt that, especially with regard to manipulating sound through keyframes, this form of software was too simple for my short film. I felt confident with editing on Premiere Pro, as it is a software that I have used both throughout my foundation and advanced portfolio work, and therefore I was able to develop on my basic skill and broaden my knowledge of the software for experimenting with the manipulation, but also learning that a professional effect can be created for a simple transition positioned at the exact moment in the sequence, rather than needing to create a dramatically edited piece. I was able to manipulate the colour of some of my frames, as when gaining feedback from my initial footage, a suggestion was made that some of my shots may benefit from a slight colour correction. The program also acted as a hub for my external footage, music, title sequences, and original ident for my production company, Seaside Productions. And in turn, it allowed me to draw all the separate elements together through cuts and transitions to create a smooth sequence. From reviewing previous work of editing for genetics, I felt the lack of knowledge in post-production showed for the overload of cross-dissolved transitions. I felt that I have learnt from this that a professional effect can be created through the saying less is more, and learnt that transitions can be extremely effective within a piece was used at appropriate moment. For example, applying a cross-dissolve or a simple dip to black transition at the point where the scene cuts from one location to the next creates a more smoother overall finish to the film. As I mentioned before, a strength to using a more advanced piece of media technology such as Premiere Pro over a basic one such as Windows Movie Makers meant that I was not only able to overlay the audio on top of my footage, but also able to add keyframes. which in turn allowed me to manipulate a small segment of my music rather than having to change it all. For example, I was able to add a keyframe to increase the volume of music for the opening scene and then decrease it once the ambience of the scene changed. However, the only issue that arose within the editing process was when it came to exporting my footage. As I was using my YouTube account to stream my piece, I had learned from previous work that the image quality is higher when exported under a YouTube format. However, when I did this footage, the footage became jumpy, and therefore I had to export it as quickly as a QuickTime file, which did not have an effect on the image quality. This in turn demonstrated a limitation to the technological program, as the image quality is greatly affected when a sequence is converted into a QuickTime format. Although I used Premiere Pro CS4 to construct my film sequence, and was a vital program in the editing of my footage captured, when it came to constructing the title sequence, I drew on previous knowledge I gained and used the program After Effects CS4. This program allowed me both to create text over the plain black background for the end titles and also create text over a transparent background, which in turn allowed me to overlay my main title moments on top of the opening shot within Premiere Pro. The program also allowed me to create a number of layers, therefore I could create a simple animation sequence for my main title by having each individual letter as a different frame and fading them in one after another, as well as creating a fade in and fade out sequence for the end titles. With regard to the research stage, I wouldn't have been anywhere without the internet, which has provided an almost unlimited source of data. Therefore, it has played a great importance in the development of my short film, by allowing me to find out about the conventions of a short film, evaluate the work of previous filmmakers, and research into the elements behind my own idea of a short silent film. I had never previously worked in the form of short film, or even viewed many short films, and therefore the internet enabled me, before starting my main project, to gain some background knowledge. By using Google, I was able to research into how a short film differs compared to a feature-length film. For example, the most obvious difference is the length. As Gareth Evans stated, short films are films that end earlier. In order to be classified as a short film, it must be less than 40 minutes long, and Gareth also indicates that a short film needs to imply more than possible to be screened in a limited time. I was also able to specifically research into the criteria of a good short film. For example, a successful short film is one that, rather than following a cliché idea, develops its own twist and original aspect to a certain subject matter. The internet also allowed me to access websites such as BBC Film Networks, YouTube and Virgin Media Shorts, which allowed me to discover which short films by other filmmakers had been most popular, and from these develop an understanding as to what kind of plot, narrative and overall style worked. For example, I discovered that as a subgenre to short film, comedy was well received. This was demonstrated by the positive feedback gained from short films such as The Black Hole and My Beast's Best Friend. Although I was not attracted to creating a comedy, it did help me understand that some of the most well-received films are those with the most simplest plot ideas. I was also able to search the web in order to develop my own basic knowledge behind the fundamental forms of my final film idea. For example, I used Google and specifically Wikipedia in order to gain an understanding of the silent film as a form. I was then able to use YouTube in order to access clips of example short silent films. From this research, I discovered that within a silent film, the visual images are of great importance, that the story must be told through action rather than words. Therefore, many expressions are almost theatrical, and the pace of the film itself is much slower than a conventional film. I also discovered that the music is the replacement for the dialogue, and therefore, within a silent film, it is crucial that the music works in sync with the visuals. I also use Google as a source in order to research behind the stages involved within planning the planning of my construction. For example, I wanted not only to construct my storyboard, but also develop an understanding behind the process. Storyboarding, which was developed by Walt Disney in the 1930s, is seen as a large blueprint for the film, as it provides the visual layout of the film, and with regards to animation or silent film, is sometimes used in place of an actual script. I also researched the elements behind writing a script and constructed my own media glossary whereby I explored in detail different shots, camera angles, camera movements, narrative and sound. Another main technology that I used was Google Blogger. This is a form of media technology and allowed me to document the chronological development stages to my production piece, from the initial brief to the weeks of research and planning, to the physical construction, to the hours of editing, and then on to the final evaluation. The use of Blogger therefore meant I could log my work in an efficient, interactive, and systematic way. In order to personally make my blog more user-friendly and in turn effective, I utilised the interactivity of it by streaming videos directly from YouTube, documenting my written form such as my storyboarding, by taking an image with my phone and uploading onto the page, and creating shortcut links to the websites which I have sourced my information. This in turn allowed for my blog to be more eye-catching, interesting and easier to navigate. By having my own blog link directly to my school's blog, I was able to be followed by other media students, which allowed me to gain feedback throughout my development from my peers, which has been a great asset. Similar to my film, for both my ancillary tasks I had to explore and apply a wide range of media technologies, from the internet to Adobe Photoshop to Microsoft Publisher to InDesign, and to simply Microsoft Word, all playing a vital role in the final creation of my poster and review. Firstly, similar with any product, research was essential to the creation of my ancillary tasks, and therefore the internet again was a great source. It helped me source the conventions behind each element. For example, for film posters, I was able to source from Google Images a number of examples and conclude that one of the conventions was to have a main, eye-catching visual image positioned in the centre of the poster in order to attract and draw the audience eye in. However, in my research into existing film reviews, I got taught that technology is not also always necessary. In order to gain an understanding about the conventions behind the review, I decided that the best way was to physically buy the film magazines and read them, and learnt that, for example, the images for film review is conventionally taken directly from the film, and that there's always with the reviews are some kind of form star rating. In terms of the construction of my final poster, I used a variety of media technologies, one being Adobe Photoshop CS4, and the other being a site that was recommended by a peer, Pixel.com. Though a less comprehensive program, found that this, when combined with Photoshop, I was able to distort and manipulate the original image via the web program. For example, I faded the main image and using a focal tool made the shoes and labels the only element in focus. Similar to how I had used Premiere Pro as a base for my editing, I then used Photoshop as a base program for my poster, whereby I could import the image which I had created on Pixel and add layers on top of this original image, which was a skill that I'd worked on within software workshops carried out at the start of my production. I also decided to construct my film review on a less conventional media program. I started to construct my review on Adobe InDesign. However, I was limited by the software of which I had access to from my own home computer, and therefore decided that I would construct my review in Publisher, which would enable me to complete it at home. Drawing on my research I had carried out into the conventions of the review, I sourced by my image directly from a print screen. Then I imported it into Photoshop, whereby I cropped the edges and faded the image a little in order to create continuity between my poster and review image. I actually constructed my text boxes, however, on Word, and then cut and paste them into Publisher, whereby I was able to use the margins and column tool in order to establish my layout for my review. Overall, the programs I used were less comprehensive, but I still feel I was able to show through media technology and create a professional finish. The limitation to Publisher did, however, come when it came to exporting my review in order to upload it onto my blog as an image. I had to firstly save it as a PDF. This in turn allowed me to open it within Photoshop when I was at school, and from that I was able to save it as a JPEG format. My evaluation, I feel, was rather fittingly has allowed me to draw upon all of my previous media technologies I've used throughout the variety of stages. I've used Blogger not only to stream my responses to the evaluation questions, but also to look back through the whole project as well as my foundation portfolio in order to develop an in-depth analysis of my work, such as looking at the work I constructed into target audience at AS in order to answer the question on audience feedback on it at A2. I've also used the internet to source additional data, such as that on the definition of a form and convention, as well as accessing images and clips in order to make my responses more interactive and visual. I've used the Canon HD camera and tripod to record my responses to some of the questions and edited my footage on Premiere Pro, but also created the title sequence on After Effects. I've also used photo websites such as pinkmonkey.com in order to create photo collages as evidential proof to support my answer. All in all, therefore, without the variety of media technologies, I would have not been able to create my short film moments, as throughout each stage I was reliant on some form of technology, from the logging of my progress on my ongoing blog, to the researching of the basic conventions, to the creation of the products, to the editing of the footage, and even to the evaluating of the work. However, the most important thing to feel is confident with the software you use, to feel comfortable with experimenting and playing around with the different effects and overall developing on your skill within this area.